Hello. So today we have Mr. Sanjay Diwakar, who works with the Big Four in market access, market growth. He's a chartered accountant from 1998 batch, a very senior professional, and he's kindly consented to come on this show to share his insights about the sales and marketing, branding, trust building activities which professional service firms should engage in. So welcome to the show, sir. If you could start off with a brief background about your journey, that will be great.
Okay, it's an interesting journey. I'm a botanist to start with, and a chartered accountant, and actually looked into the elements of sales that begins for me, and that was an accident, and it's something which is close to my heart. By accident, I picked that up, and we really enjoyed this. The whole concept was the Big Four had not started its footprints in India at that point of time. There was a few of them which was very active. I was with EY those days, I remember, and they had just started their presence in terms of moving out to market. And the whole aspect of really taking the firm to the market was a big issue at that point of time. And there were hardly any employees also in that organization then. And I was based out of Calcutta, and we had a task. So how do we really take the EY solutions to the market? Who do we take to the market first? The interesting journey came to me, choice came to me by my uh, partner, my mentor, Sudipto Das, who mentioned uh, when you are playing football, you play the game, you can play it in a small pada lane, you can play in a state level tournament or in a club level activity, you can play nationals and you can play international. The rule of the game is the same, but your choice is how you build your skill to position yourself in where you're playing. So that is a skill game, a skill set that really you understand who is your customer base, who are you trying to work on, and how big can you think in that line. That was the genesis where actually the knack of meeting people, networking was a passion to me. I'd learned it in very early days that network is equal to net worth. So the whole focus of having my own network built in for reasons which were not really business, but personal was a hobby to me. So it started by through my father's profession as a doctor. He had the access to the bedroom of all that mattered, and people, his businesses, his clients, his patients were all big families, rich families who had the access. And when they used to come down, there was a kind of my mother's knack of helping around in terms of connecting to the people. So some traits came because of upbringing, and we really picked that up. So the networking aspect, I could realize that I had to become relevant. So to what I wanted. So I learned in early days, the client buys for his reasons, not for my reasons. So I really started looking at focusing on what is the reason of the client for him to buy a particular service. It not it may not your timing may not be right in terms of what you're trying to sell, or what you really need think is a context to sell. So it was just an element of trying and understanding the client better. What are his issues? What are his challenges? Becoming a bit empathetic to him, to the client, focusing more in terms of can I be by your side? Will you allow me to be by your side to really hear you out? What's the problem? What's the problem statement? What's the challenge that you are grappling with? What's the aspiration that you have? And dig deeper to really understand how we can really be relevant to that person that I was interacting. So that was an aspect which was not related to business at all. It could have been anything, talking about films, talking about colleagues, talking about the politics, talking about cricket. But the aspect of really allowing that person to have that comfort with you first. Does he consider you to be a friend? Does he consider to be like-minded? Does he consider that you are valuable? So these were the things where we start knowing the person across, and then we really uh, get to the space of building a relationship which could be culminating in a business. So it is not transactional, to answer your question. It is an aspect which takes a lot of social alignment and personal alignment with an individual. Transactions will happen as a fallout whenever it is needed by the client or the customer. But we really need to keep on spreading a network and wait for the right moment where you can pluck a fruit for yourself.
So
That
how do
is
you approach
the
a
way it
typical
works.
sales cycle, sir? I mean, in terms of, let's say there's this one promoter who has that potential to give business. And I'm asking not in a big four setting, but let's say in a setting of a small professional service firm. So you have, let's say you meet that person in a conference, or you have a reference who arranges that 5-minute meeting. From there, how does one pick up a relationship? And if you can tell that subtle aspects of that 6 month or 1 year sales cycle where you don't come across as being pushy, but eventually walk away with business. So what could be that typical to-do strategy that will be there?
I'll give you an example. Since you mentioned this, I'll give you an example, an instance in my life of an illustration uh, where I interacted with a stranger and I converted into a big business.
Acha.
It was an instance of my alumni group, my articleship alumni group, the firm that I got articled with. And so there were, years, batches, many batches who were part of that alumni. People who were in my batch, people who were in earlier batch, people who are in my later batch. So one of those persons out of that group just set a small question in that WhatsApp. I'm going to Bhiwadi. Do you know anybody whom I can meet there in Rajasthan? A simple question. Now that set me thinking, and this is experience in being Mackie and really sniffing business. I thought, why this person would ever write to a whole community of known and strangers that he is going to Bhiwadi and he would like to meet somebody known there. So it set me thinking. I just did a little homework to realize that he's a CFO of a company. And a company, and out of inquisitiveness only, I called him and introduced myself. I'm part of this group. And I was intrigued to know more about this question. Is it an investment in mine? Because that is an industrial belt, a growth center in Rajasthan. So, do you have some kind of investment in mind that your company is looking into? And is it an aspect of an assessment of the investment, whether you should call a go no go decision has to be taken? You're going to evaluate by a visit there. It says bang on. How could you understand this? I said, well, if that is the case, then I must tell you something of an organization that I know what they do to help such people in such frame of mind. He said, okay, what is in your mind? I said, first of all, they would be actually going and evaluating the location where we want to set up the plant. And the business environment in that place, the political environment in that place, and the aspect of opportunities of supply chain and linkages. So there would be 16, 20, 30 questions that you will have in mind which you need an answer to. Maybe you know 16, but I know our approach of this organization, which has 42 ways of filtering what you need in this space. So it could be an exercise where I can connect you to the friend. He's a dear friend. I'll call him up and let's see what he has to say. Mind you, it was 8:30 in the night at that point of time, and a conversation happening, which was a casual introduction that you are alumni with me and what I did and what I do and what was his concern about. And believe it or not, in another half an hour, I had my expert on the call with me and asking him a question. Sir, where is this exact location that you have actually been shortlisted a plant? He said, this place. The second question was, sir, do you have an expansion in mind in later years after that, in that location, if it is a fruitful location? He said, yes. Well, there's the plot of land that you're talking of is landlocked. There is a mountain just behind it. You cannot go beyond and expand. There's no land available around that. And it will not be a viable land that you're looking at. And the cost at which you're taking government land is pricey. There's another location which I think could be in the interesting location for you. When are you visiting everybody? He said, yes, I'm going there tomorrow. Well, can you defer by a day? Because I'm in Jaipur and from there I can come down the next day. The guy got so intrigued and interested. He said, yeah, ये बंदा तो मेरे को कुछ solution दे के रखेगा, कुछ तो जानता मेरे से ज्यादा जानता है. And he said, okay, I'll defer by a day. He changed his plan. And, it culminated in not only doing a locational advisory study for them, but also we got the mandate of doing a DPR for the project for them. And the mandate, which was just a small gesture of an introduction, it landed up into a big assignment for me. So the whole context is my solution was not important. His concern was important. How important was his concern? And it's something I use a very funny example. You should be a toilet paper when somebody is stuck in toilet. Then
Yes.
only you can actually sell for value.
So, sir, like for example, between meeting a person and let's say there's a first introduction and access, how do you stay connected in the next 1 year, 2 years? Because for most of us, the approach is Holi, Diwali, Jai Jagannath, Happy Independence Day. And I think these are big turnouts because on those days, everyone spams up the target. So what do you think would be more innovative, more novel methods of staying connected, being on that brand recall or mind recall? At least I have the mind space of the customer, some part of that.
See, it's a matter of relevance. When you are hovering with thoughts, you mind you today, if you are one service line only, you have a thought process which is different. But if you have a combination of services, and like in Big Four, we find audit, tax, advisory, and within advisory, there would be 16, 20 or more kind of advisory, multiple functions that can work. So the whole perspective is you have to be aware of and train yourself internally of the competencies that you need to take to market. It could be if you're an individual and you're not a competent person and you have to be relevant for an individual, then you have to have a kind of a group of friends with multiple talents and skills where you can do revenue sharing if it is required. But you really got to invest in terms of knowing competencies which clients may require. And be aligned with those competencies, understand what are the best things which the client requires. And then you have to work on understanding the client need, client's priorities, client's challenges, client's concerns, client's what is the how is in the dark, what is the light he is seeking for. He may be aware of a challenge, but he may not be aware of a solution. In some cases, it goes beyond. He is not even aware of the challenge.
For example,
Say when you have when you have a regulatory change that is coming, which is going to impact his business, he's not aware of it. He's doing his business as usual. But there is a big impact that has happened, and from a regulatory perspective, you may have to enlighten him sir, this is going to change the entire business model for you. Correct. So that whole context has to be looked into. Say we are talking about the mega trends in the world today. They are say the whole aspect of disparity of wealth, which is growing, the rich are getting richer, poor getting poorer. The whole aspect of disruption happening in the world today because of technological advancements, technology getting obsolete very quickly, and new technologies coming in, which is making businesses very, very efficient. Look at the issues of climate change. We are India today, during the peak hours, peak days in May, the temperature soared to 50 degrees. Never heard of. Calcutta had faced 45, 48 degrees, felt like 56 degrees in times. Never heard of. The impact of disruption because of climate change. And look at what is happening with the global war that is happening, the global events that are taking. The whole aspect of dynamics of supply chain, raw material getting coming in, then the whole issue that we faced, if you remember at one particular point of time, there were the whole pirates actually attacking your shipping lines, harassing things, global events. Until unless these things are there, how can one really get gear up and make something worthwhile? So this is another challenge that we see. We see in India, we are the youngest population, but when we go to Europe, the aging profile and the need of the people at that age is totally different with what the consumerism would be in India. So how do you really choose a market? How do you really understand consumerism? Is the client aware of that consumerism state of situation, current state of that situation? Yesterday, when we were attending, we came to know of the opportunities and emerging opportunities in Gulf countries for chartered accountants. So, are we really ready in terms of understanding what is the landscape of opportunity we are giving to, we are going to get in terms of earning a better global revenue rather than the Indian revenue? Is it dollars that we are earning or is it rupees that we are going to earn? What is the opportunity? How have we mapped that opportunity? So all this context is in terms of your own preparation of really understanding where you are. We are seeing polarization, the nationalism versus populism in the government, the whole concept of drastic changes in states, that some things would be allowed in certain states, certain things are not a good opportunity in other states. So really, how do you understand what is getting popular in a state in terms of incentivization and what is not getting in another state? That could be a case of an incentivization. The whole trust today that we see in the current trends, there's a whole drop in the trust within families, trust within the governments, trust for the institution that underpin our society. It's all getting shaken up. In these circumstances, every business needs to discover and reinvent the business model. So, are we in that position to demonstrate the change that a client requires? So, that is where it may be an aspect of a client knowing or not knowing, and how you really make yourself find a room for yourself in his office table across him to have a conversation which is meaningful for him, which is a valid business reason for him to connect. So, how do we really position ourselves from a knowledge perspective? How do we earn our respect first before we can talk of any solution to them? That is not being pushy, but that is being empathetic with the
That
client.
knowledge really helps.
And empathy is what will build. Yes, yes. So that is where the whole context of approach to a client, it cannot be, sir, फेरी ले लो, फेरी ले लो. मेरे पास झुंझुना है, मेरे पास गुड़िया है, मेरे पास टॉफी है, कुछ तो ले लो. It's not the case. That is a person who will go and accidentally meet a person in that situation. But when you are doing professional selling, a professional selling is thus has to be customized to the client need, and how do you really have an understanding whether the client understands his need or not, and you understand that there is a need or not. You also need to understand the timing of when you have that conversation. These are very important elements before we really prepare ourselves, where we need to prepare ourselves before we go and talk to a client. And with that aspect of getting that opportunity and the mind space that yes, he is
Worth being
somebody who is
talked
a friend
to
in need for me.
as a
He is
friend.
a friend in need for me. And that is how it picks up. I have seen a situation today where I talk to a client. He's not only talking about his business challenges, he's actually talking about his son's divorce. He's talking about his son-in-law's limitation of getting into bigger business and getting stuck with old business, traditional business, and income's not growing for him as a concern. Talking about his organizational challenges in terms of his people, he's not getting the right people. Talking about his age, and because of him, if he steps down, he's the biggest risk to the organization. If he steps down, the organization stops functioning. Are you in that space of a conversation of that trust with that client? And talking about trust, we did speak about trust. Are you the trusted friend around? Is what you got to build in.
So my last question to you would be, what would be your advice to someone who runs a small professional service firms? So does the context change? Does the method change? Or does the approach change when that person is, let's say, small professional service firms will not be able to sell very distinguished services as such. You're competing in a more in a commoditized service space. So in that case also, can you build brands? Can you build trust? So maybe you're just 2 minutes or 3 minutes on this. That would be my
Well,
final
it's
question.
interesting. It's a very, very interesting question, Anurag. Let me share with you the whole context of commodities if you were to look at it. I shared this example of toilet paper situation. The situation matters. So the whole aspect of are you the recall when this situation happens? Are you the first person that reflects in the back of the mind of the client when such situation happens? Have you really created that kind of an impact? See, talking about it, sales happens for two reasons. One aspect comes from a element of merit of the product and the service that and the competency that you have. And the other component which one has to be mindful is the quality of relationship and trust that you have with that person who will come to you as a kind of a client to you. Does he trust you? If he understands that there is a merit in the product and competency is there, but he's not sure whether he can trust you or not. But there could be another person whom he trusts, but may not have that kind of a meritocracy of the product or service that you have. He will still go to that person. So that is what is important. You have to have the two pillars kept in mind. Trust, what is the quality of trust that you've created, and the aspect of meritocracy of the competence that you're going to take as a service, because we are professionals. So we have to understand about our own competencies and the strength of our competencies. So these two elements go hand in hand, and you have to establish that. And to establish that, at times you may require a coach who can talk about you and create an hello and an aura about you even before you met him.
And that's why you spoke about, I think, collaborations where more than one people jointly kind of approach a sales
Yeah.
situation.
So you have to understand who is a person who is highly respected at the client side by the client, who has zero self-interest in about himself, but 100% interest in you to ensure that you're that you can get a chance to grow. If you got connected to the client through that person, the aspect of trust can be built in.
Fantastic. I mean, this
So,
is really wonderful.
so this is how you really come to that landscape where you can have the cake and eat it too.
Fantastic, sir. And I think these were some invaluable nuggets of wisdom. And people who want to approach, sir, I think your LinkedIn handle or somewhere would be some places where they can reach out to you for guidance or something. So I'll be sharing your LinkedIn connect in the description and in the pinned comment. So thank you so much, sir, for coming on this show and sharing this words of wisdom. And I'm really sure that the ones who watch
Yes,
this will be really benefited.
as we understand, Anurag, this is an Amrit Kal. Small businesses have to become big. We have to go global. We cannot get stuck in the local aspects. We have to build our businesses bigger and wider. The whole aspect of G20 has given us an opportunity of that, that I can call about that hidden coach who has already done the kind of positioning of our competencies. We are qualitatively much better than the rest in the world. It's just an aspect of reaching out to the right competence and the right, linkages to position our brand. Last word I would like to put in: what builds trust? That is something before we call it off. Trust is a manifestation of a formula that I learned in life. Let us put it as as I said, K is equal to TH as a formula for network is equal to net worth as one takeaway. The other aspect, which is very close to my heart, is trust is equal to CRIS, CRIS. And there's a mathematical formula in that. It says credibility plus reliability plus intimacy divided by self-interest. Trust is inversely proportional to self-interest. If you show your interest more when you reach out to a client, that distances the client from you.
Hmm.
You have to build on credibility. You have to build on the reliability about yourself. You have to become closer to him. Intimacy, it could happen directly or through the coach that I mentioned. And the whole aspect of client, put the client first, then your interest. That itself would be important. A person stuck in toilet would pay you as much as you can if you have the toilet paper and nobody else is there when he needs someone.
So
He will
that
ascribe
trust
that
that
value
has to
for
be
that
built.
solution. That is the trust that you will be able to imbibe. I leave it with this silly example, but very powerful example to really help your peers to really, gain on how we conduct ourselves by not being pushy yet being relevant to the client. And wait, it's something like what the farmer does, right? He has, come rain or no rain, at the time of the season, he has to sow the seeds and wait for the rain.
Hmm.
If it is a good season, he will get a good crop. It may be a bad season, he may have to work hard to till the soil, do some irrigation out there, do some drip irrigation if the situation is hard. But yet, it is our purushar, our effort to really understand how we do it. And we continue to sow the seeds
That's
of relationship. And that is how we will be able to progress. That's the last message. If I've done justice to this entire conversation, I leave it to that. Thank
thank
you
you.
for having me.
Thank you so much, sir. It was an honor, and I think a lot of good, practical, implementable advices were given in this context. Thank you so much, sir.